Alright, so something just came in the mail today from the post office, and if it is what I think it is, then this video is going to be 10 times better. Got this big package. It's raining outside, so they put it in a garbage bag. But I'm going to take it over to my living room, and we're going to open it up, and hopefully it is what I think it is. So what I think it is the other day, I ordered a shirt and a vest from Historical Emporium, not sponsored once more. And seeing as today's video is going to be about vests, I thought that if I had a new vest, which I had been eyeing for a little bit, it would make the video only better. And seeing as the vest has arrived just on time for the filming of this video, it is perfect timing to do an unboxing. So, today we are going to be doing an unboxing of my new Historical Emporium garments, and we are going to be talking about vests. Always cut away from yourself. I have here a shirt that is a bit more appropriate to the time period that I'm working with. And I just ordered this because I was tired of having modern shirts with buttonholes in the collars and having folding collars instead of standing collars. So it'll be nice having a more appropriate shirt. Plus, this shirt only buttons halfway, which is more historical. Shirts that button all the way down, also known as coat shirts at the time, weren't really popular until way later in the Victorian period. And it's not really till the modern period and the Edwardian period that we see a prominent wearing of coat shirts or modern button-downs. We're not here to talk about a shirt. We're here to talk about vests. So if you'll give me a moment to get dressed, we can begin our conversation about vests and waistcoats. Alright, I'm back. So, as you can see, I'm wearing something that you have never seen before. My brand new vest. And you're probably wondering why this vest in particular is so important to the video and why I purchased it specifically. And the reason is because this style is actually very semblant of the style in the early Victorian period. So let's get into what vests were like. So first we're going to go into the style of vests that were worn. If we look at a lot of photos, paintings, and fashion plates, we see both single and double-breasted vests. In my case, I'm wearing a single-breasted vest just because I prefer single-breasted. It's more versatile, doesn't get as hot when it's warmer out, and it looks just as fine. As far as collars go, both shawl collars and notched lapels were acceptable. However, I find that shawl collars seem to be more common. Now, if you don't know what a shawl collar is, this is a shawl collar. It's a collar that goes all the way around usually. On this, it stops at the shoulder seam. But usually on historical vests, the collar goes all the way around. And instead of having a notch at the top and coming down into a point, a shawl collar rounds out towards the bottom with a deep cut in the middle and has no notch on the top of the lapel. Now, as far as build and shape is concerned, men actually had a very feminine silhouette back in the 1840s. And as far as vests are concerned, that feminine silhouette would continue well into the 1860s and even into the 1870s. And what I mean by feminine silhouette is the men's chest was heavily accentuated, so garments tended to have padding on the top and cinch in tightly at the waist as to give a sort of pigeon-breasted look that we more commonly associate with women in the early 1900s. Now, why this shape was desirable, I have no idea. But the look of the 1840s gentleman was to have a tight waist and a puffed chest. Now, interestingly, something that most people don't really know about in as far as Victorian history goes, in the early Victorian period, some men in the upper class would actually wear male corsets that would cinch in their waists. They didn't have the breast support that women's corsets had. It was just the lower half. But they would wear corsets to cinch in their waists to give an even more exaggerated differentiation between the size of their waist and their stomach compared to the size of their chest. And that's what really gives the super feminine look that we associate with it. Nowadays, most formal garments don't have functional pockets. If they do have pockets, then they're usually sewn shut. However, in the Victorian period, pockets were more abundant and definitely used as pockets. For example, I hold my watch in my pocket, hence pocket watch. So as you might find on a modern vest, a sewn shut pocket on either side, Victorians kept their pockets unsewn and used them. And a vest could have as many as 4 pockets actually. Mine has 2, which seem to be most common. Some vests actually had 3 pockets, some had up to 4, although 4 pockets was less formal and was considered a more work vest style. Now, I've never really seen an example of a vest with 1 pocket or 5 pockets, or even 6 pockets. They could have existed, but as far as my awareness to them, I've never seen a vest with anything other than 2, 3, or 4. Now, another interesting thing about Victorian vests is that they were shorter than modern vests. Now, I think I mentioned this in my Basics of a Victorian Gentleman video. Because pants had a higher waist, the vests also were raised a bit because they didn't need to be so long. And if they were longer, they would probably end up covering up some of the pants pockets. So I actually have with me 3 of my vests from my collection, 2 of which are Victorian and 1 of which is modern. And I'm going to compare them to each other, and so we can see the differences between a modern vest and a historical vest. So this one you might recognize. I've worn this one in all of my videos so far, except for my autumn vlog. This one is the one I wear most often because it works with all of my garments. So this is actually polyester, but it's made to look like silk. And as you can see, this one has a notched lapel instead of a shawl collar. And it's actually really short. And it does have 2 functional pockets on the bottom, and actually a very shallow V in between the collar. But because it has this collar and 2 functional pockets, and because it's much shorter, it is technically a Victorian vest. And then we can compare it to this one, which is my other Victorian vest, which is my actual work vest. As far as Victorian clothing is concerned, I never work in this vest, but it's more of a work vest because it's made of a cotton canvas and it has 4 functional pockets that you can put your watch, your wallet, glasses, maybe even a small pistol into. And because it's more practical and a more sturdy, less fancy material, this would be more of a work vest. And also you can see that it has much simpler buttons, so it would be considered a bit less fancy. and a bit more practical. This one also has a notched lapel, but it's a much wider lapel and a deeper cut. Now, if we compare that to this vest, this is one of my modern vests. And one of the things that makes it modern is it doesn't have any lapel. Now, in the early Victorian period, especially, maybe not so towards the later Victorian period, I'll have to look into it, all vests, and I have yet to see an example challenging this, but I do believe that all vests had some sort of either notched lapel or shawl collar. Because this one doesn't is what makes it a modern vest. Nowadays, we've abandoned lapels on our vests. I don't know why. I think it looks kind of weird now that I've gotten used to the Victorian style, but that's just what it is. You can also see that, especially compared to this vest, it's much longer. And that longer style is because pants waists have gone down and we now wear belts instead of suspenders. And so we need a longer vest to cover up the belt and the belt buckle, which is now much lower. Now, technically, if I compare my modern vest to my work vest, we can see that they're basically also the same length. The only difference being that because this one has these notches on the bottom, it is slightly longer than this one. Now, in the Victorian period, I've also noticed that vests tend to have flat bottoms, kind of like this one, or like this one. Again, why that is, I don't know. Probably more of a stylistic choice. And there's probably examples that I don't know about that do have notched bottoms, notched waistlines. But it seems like most vests have flat bottoms. Now, the last thing as far as style is concerned is pattern and material. Now, the pattern and materials used in vests tended to be a bit nicer than the patterns and materials used in jackets and pants. And the reason for this is because the vest is the garment in your ensemble that you would want to show off. It's the one where you would invest the most money and use to show off your wealth. Of course, if you didn't have money, you couldn't invest money in vests. But if you did have money to any degree and you could afford a nicer looking vest than the rest of your ensemble, that was where you put your money. And actually, vest makers would often purchase or order specially made materials such as fancy silk brocades and matelassés that were especially extravagant, that they purchased just to make vests with. So as you can see, this vest has this nice sort of ornate, almost Art Deco sort of pattern over a white or cream color with gold designs. So this vest would be considered more of a, at least if it were made of a nicer material, would be a more high quality upper class vest, as opposed to a vest like this made of a cotton canvas, which is a much lower class, more working class material. And the colors are a bit obscure for the working class, but I have actually seen examples of this color and pattern in fashion plates. And then if we look at this vest and just pretend that it's actually silk, it's got this nice almost but not quite paisley pattern, this sort of floral pattern, and it's a deep rust red, which is a much more upper class, maybe upper middle class color and pattern that would have been ordered by the vest maker specifically to be made into a vest. So now that brings us into the cultural aspects of wearing a vest. So just to re-emphasize, again, the material and the colors and the patterns on your vest would be an indication of your level of wealth. Now, of course, you could spend excessive amounts of money that you don't have on a vest that you can't afford, and then you would be sort of lying to the public. But in general, the fancier the pattern and the nicer the materials, the more expensive the vest was, and therefore only more upper class people could afford them. Whereas more simple colors, darker subdued colors with milder patterns or no pattern at all would be more commonly seen in the lower class. Now, of course, if you're an upper class gentleman, you can still wear plain colored vests in darker subdued colors like browns and greens and blacks and all those sorts of darker colors. But if you wanted to show off your wealth, you would go for something that was more flowery, more intricate, with a nicer material such as a silk, and you would show it off under your coat by not buttoning it. And that's a common thing that men tended to do. They wouldn't button their frock coats in order to show off their nice vest. And vests, for the most part, never matched the coat or the pants. It was most common that your vest was odd so that it stood out from the rest of your outfit. Now, an interesting thing that I actually found when I was researching for vests is that it's not actually appropriate to remove your jacket when in the company of others. Now, of course, when you're just hanging out with your boys, in the billiard parlor shooting a game, it's fine to be standing around with just your shirt sleeves. And that's what it's called when you have no jacket on, but you are wearing a vest. It's called you're in your shirt sleeves, or your shirt sleeves are showing. And because the shirt was an undergarment, it wasn't acceptable to wear your shirt sleeves in public. Now, it was just fine to show off your vest, because your vest was a sort of intermediate garment. But until the 1860s and really into the 1870s, it wasn't acceptable to show your shirt sleeves unless you were by yourself or with your family or working really hard on a hot day. And so if you had company over, or you were in public, or you were in any sort of formal occasion, or you weren't with your family but with other people, even if they were your friends, especially if you were in the presence of a lady, you would never remove your jacket to expose your shirt sleeves. And in a way, this makes sense because, as I've stated many times before, the shirt is an undergarment. And until really 1868, the shirt remains an undergarment, because in 1868, we see the invention of the union suit. But that's for another video. So really, until the invention of the union suit, the shirt is an undergarment. So to go around in your shirt sleeves in public is like walking around outside in the street wearing nothing but a tank top. And I guess it's not that bad if you live in the South and it's a hot day. You often do see people walking around without a shirt or in just a tank top. But in general, it's kind of the same thing. So I just thought that was something really interesting that is good to know in the context of the Victorian period. So if you're really going for that realism, whenever you're in the presence of the public or people who are not related to you or aren't the boys, keep your coat on, please. Unless, of course, you don't mind, and then do your thing. So now the question is, what should you wear? And the answer is, really, it depends on your character. So if you're an upper class gentleman, I would opt for a vest that has a nice pattern on it. If you can get it in an expensive material or a replica of an expensive material, then I would do so in maybe a lighter color. I've seen in paintings and fashion plates that vests were often of a lighter color than the rest of the ensemble. Usually the darkest piece was the coat, followed by the pants, and then the vest was the lightest. Now that's not always true, but usually. So I would definitely go for a vest with a collar, either a notched lapel or a shawl collar like this. Stay away from modern vests that don't have any lapel whatsoever. If you can find one with a very deep cut, then that's also good, unless you're going for a later period where high cuts were starting to become popular, like the 1860s and 70s and 80s. If you're rich, again, go for a lighter color with an intricate pattern, maybe some nice buttons too. If you can find one with cloth buttons, then I would definitely go for it, because cloth buttons were pretty common back then, and having exposed metal buttons like this really wasn't too popular. If you can find a shawl collar vest that goes all the way around the back, then that's even better. Now, if you're in the working class or the lower class, definitely go for something more subdued and even lose the pattern, because patterns were expensive to weave, and so they were expensive to purchase. So if your character can't afford too much extravagance, go for a simpler plain vest still with the collar, maybe out of a cotton canvas or wool, maybe exposed metal buttons, but still try and find something with covered buttons, and definitely keep it more toned down. So other than that, that's about it. Hopefully you've now been thoroughly informed about what vests were like in the early Victorian period, namely the 1840s. If you guys want to hear about vests in the later half of the Victorian period, namely the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I'd be happy to do research and do a video. But for now, this is what I've been able to find. Thanks for watching the video. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell if this is the type of thing that you're into. Stay up to date with all my videos. I'll try to post about once a week. I may or may not miss, just based on scheduling with work and family. Once again, make sure to leave a comment down below if there's anything that you want to see in the future. But other than that, thanks for watching, and hope to see you again next time. Again, like, subscribe, comment, notification bell, all that jazz.